So we see that King David enters the royal family of Saul, even though Saul has no regard for his achievement as such. He gets the hand of Saul's youngest daughter, Michal, and she happens to hide him from Saul after some time, because Saul was in search of David's blood. That is, he wanted to kill him because he could not accept the fact that David is trying to be the popular king of Israel, popular prince of Israel, because we have his sons. We have Saul's son, who we have Saul descendants through blood itself, but even his sons and daughters are against the Saul's intentions. And King David, on the other hand, actually tries to communicate with Saul in a very, very nice manner. But Saul actually threatens him, and he is made to flee from the city of Gath, or Telgath. And we see that after he goes from the city of Gath, David is seen hiding out in the caves, the mountain caves that is there in Telgath. And we see that Saul ultimately commits suicide in the war battlefield when his son Jonathan is being attacked by the Philistine in order to reinstate his kingdom of Israel. So David, after the death of Saul, David becomes the king of Israel. And the first thing that he focuses on was to initiate a capital city for Israel. He was destined to unite the Israeli tribes that was there in the region. And we see that he actually creates a kind of capture which is similar to the Trojan capture by the Greeks. He attacks Jerusalem in the night and captures the city, wherein he regards himself to build a temple for him. But he was corrected by another prophet, Nathan, that the temple is not for him, it's for the God, the Arch Covenant, which later on we see that it was King Solomon who actually builds that temple in Jerusalem. He could not build it. David could not build it. David, there's a problem with David. He was although married to Michal, but he was a very ill-tempered person, and we see that when Michal actually complains David about him dancing on the roads while capturing Jerusalem, he actually punishes Michal in a way that she would not bear him any children. We see that King David was attracted to many ladies, in the sense that the most controversial of that being of the wife of his Commander General Uriah. Uriah was one of his most trusted Commander General, and he actually commits adultery with his wife, and that's Bathsheba, who he happens to see while bathing. There was another lady also whom he creates a sense of attraction towards, who was called Abigail, and which later on came on to be the mother of King Solomon. And we see that David tried to instate Jerusalem as the capital city of Israel, because he wanted the temple to be built there. So that particular problem, that particular thing, constituted the conflict between the Abrahamic faith that came into existence several years after Jesus Christ. We have the conflicts which basically started off after the invasions of Israel by the British troops in the late 12th century AD. So with that, I think almost now let's just skip the historical part. Major part of the history has been covered so far. So after many years, after Jesus Christ comes next in Jerusalem, and after Jesus Christ, during Jesus Christ's time, I think we have the Romans, who were actually the rulers of this part of the world. Israel, Egypt, and Lebanon, and all those areas were ruled by the Roman Nero Caesar. And after Jesus Christ, many years passed by, and with the emergence of Islam in Saudi Arabia through Prophet Muhammad, we have many caliphs traveling through Syria, Iraq, as well as Palestine, Israel, and especially Turkey. And it is this place where we have the Ottoman Empire, the rise of the Arab Empire in the Middle East, in Turkey, which ruled the world wide over for almost 1,000 years. For almost 1,000 years, it was the Turkish Ottoman Empire that hold the power, the political power in all these areas that you see over here. All the areas, basically all the Middle Eastern groups, as well as the African continent and the Central European, Asian, and European figures. So the thing is, after the Ottoman Empire collapsed by the 19th century, that is at the latter half of the 19th century, maybe the last decade of the 19th century, we see the emergence of the British and French troops occupying areas of Israel, as well as Jordan, as well as Egypt. Right, but these occupations were connected with self-governing rule systems. So basically, during the Ottoman Empire time, we see that the place that we focused on the brown colored map region here, and the small red colored map region here. So during the Ottoman Empire, we have 88% of Muslims actually resided in this place. Right, there were 88% of Muslims, and 10% of Christians were living there, and we had only 3% of Jews. Jews at that time, by that time, went to different places. They started immigrating to different parts, especially to Spain, Italy, and Germany, Poland areas, where we see a huge number of Germans occupations by them. So at that time, in the sense 19th century last, we see that during the Ottoman Empire period, uh, we see that around 88% of the total population in this particular area constituted the Muslims, and there was only a 3% minority of Jews. But by 1910, that is during the First World War, we see that the Jew immigrants started coming out, and they started focusing on their promised lands. And these Jew immigrants was basically the secular Jewish people, rather than focusing on the religious aspect of Jewish promised land. They focused on a homeland for Jews in a secular perspective, and hence they were called the Zionist people. And they started coming from all over the world. They started settling there, and by the time 1920s, by the time the First World War gets over, we have an equivalent, almost 330,000 Jews from different parts of the world try to settle in that area. But still, we didn't have a proper recognized state as such. Then Britishers actually planned to do one thing, just like what they did in India. They actually planned to divide and rule in that particular land, because the Christian also had a grip of Jerusalem by faith. Right, Jerusalem is considered to be the birthplace of Jesus Christ. So Christianity also had some part to play on, rather than just concentrating on Jews and Muslims. So what Britishers did was they actually split these three groups into three different sections. Like some people were given parts of Israel which focused on Jewish tradition, some people on Arabs, and some Christian faith which focused on the Jerusalem and nearby cities. So Britishers tried to divide the land in a very kind of jigsaw puzzle manner, which didn't have any kind of permanent solution to the problems that was arising later on. So by 1930s, 1920s, the Britishers tried to divide and rule the entire area in such a way that they promised the Saudi Arabian government that they would be given a part of Israel community, that's part of Palestine community, to be ruled upon, as well as they also promised the Egyptian people of having a part to rule over certain parts of the Gaza Strip, nearby Gaza Strip, which focused on a small occupation of the Israel community. And on the whole, it was just a game play by the Britishers. And ultimately, the Second World War happens. And we see that the immigration of Jews to this particular area strengthens, and Frederick and his team actually focuses on making a united Jewish state. By the time the situation completely changes from a Jewish minority to a Jewish majority state, and ultimately they take the hands of the then powers, that is USA and Russia, and try to decide and make the state of Israel by 1948. And it was during this time, 1947 to 1949, we had the famous Israel-Palestine war, which ultimately resulted in the victory of Israel. And you should also note this, because as part of the poem that we need to study, the Israel-Palestine war also happens in Tel Gath, that is Tel Safid, because Tel Safid was the place where missiles were actually executed by the Israeli community. Many civilians lost their lives during that time, and after the 2 years outbreak of war, we see that Palestinians was rejected any role in occupation of land. They didn't have any land altogether. So altogether, Israel community, there was no red map there. It was completely filled with brown. Ultimately, Britishers, as in a diplomatic manner, they tried to make a Commonwealth of Nations, which was later then called as United Nations, and they gave the problem to be solved by the United Nations. And United Nations later on proclaimed a map wherein which was very troubling, in the sense a part of Israel was completely again the map was completely distorted, wherein we have different chunks of pieces of land for the Israelis and Palestinians. And it is only after the 1960s war and with the People Liberations Party, which was headed by Yasser Arafat of Palestine, that they have kind of Fatah party, which actually kind of greeted the Israeli-Palestinian relationship in a very positive manner and tried to establish peace among these two strips. And ultimately, what happened was that there was another rebellious group that was evolving in Palestine, especially in the Gaza Strip area and the West Bank area, where West Bank area was actually populated with the Jewish community. So they also wanted a separate state. They don't want to be a part of Palestine. They wanted to be part of Israel as such. So there was a conflict between West Bank and the Gaza Strip, which also had a greater population of Palestinian people, and these Palestinian people were actually rebellious, and they started an organization which was called Hamas. Hamas organization was started, and after the start of Hamas organization, there were huge conflicts that was going on between Israel and the Palestinian group. So we have the two Palestinians actually, the new Palestinians which focused on that red map area, and the old Palestinians which focused on the Gaza Strip areas, which were actually rebellious people. So certain places, there are two places of Palestine, but certain places of Palestine are still under controversy. Many people have turn their attention towards the Gaza Strip issues, the West Bank issues that's still prevailing right now at this particular moment itself. And we have the latest update was made by Trump when he declared that Jerusalem would be the capital of Israel. At present, Jerusalem is in Palestine, and later on we see that Donald Trump ultimately declares that Jerusalem be the capital of Israel, and it was Barack Obama who tried to negotiate the problems that was faced by Palestinian and Israelite community on the whole. And Yehuda Amichai also tried to focus on resolving conflicts between Israel and Pakistan. He had a very close relationship with the Prime Minister of Israel, Rabin, and we see that he often tried his level best to resolve the problems that was associated with the two countries. And there has been lots of human rights violation by both parts of the state, as well as Israel as well as Palestine, but on the majority level basis, we see that the Israel community has threatened the civilian rights of Palestine. So Israel is a community that is actually equipped with one of the most technological advanced military equipments. They are the ones who actually create military equipments. And we see another state, Palestine, which was formerly a very, very big state during the Ottoman Empire. It was Palestine for 1,000 years. Before that, it was Israel during King David's time. Then again, after 1948, we see that Israel takes hold over Palestine. So, as per the word of God, there is always a conflict between the land. We usually say that in different sects, in different parts of the book, whether it be the Bible or the Quran or the Torah, we see that according to them, the world started in the place called Israel, and the world shall end, or the Armageddon shall appear in the place called Israel. That's the belief system of Abrahamic faith. I hope that you have got just a clear idea about the Israeli-Palestine conflict, and how Yehuda Amichai would inculcate this particular problem into his poetry. In the next video, I would be looking on to the poem at the anniversaries of war by Yehuda Amichai. Thank you.